Donald Trump did an event in Iowa, spoke in Davenport, Iowa, and I want to walk through some moments from it. Definitely a bizarre speech from him, as pretty much all of them are, but this one definitely even more so. And the first is kind of a good representation of that, where he's talking about his belief that insane asylums are being emptied out into the United States by other countries, and has a little trouble, we'll say, with making his point.
Prisons are empty. They're mental institutions. They're insane asylums, a word you're not supposed to use anymore. Words you're not supposed to use, unlike Biden. I have 3 words for you to get. We don't want to be caught in that predicament. So 2 words. Insane asylum. These are words you're not supposed to be using anymore. It's not politically incorrect. But mental institutions are being emptied out. Prisons are empty.
So he ends with another slip up saying it's not politically incorrect, of course, conveying the opposite point than the one I'm sure he was trying to make. And then he floats breaking up the Department of Education.
Select somebody who will get the job done. In addition, I am going to pursue, and we studied it very closely, and I was getting ready to do it, pull the trigger, the long-term goal, but now it's a short-term goal of breaking up the Federal Department of Education and redistributing its functions to the states.
One of the more excited moments from the perspective of the crowd there, which is unfortunate because, of course, that's the exact opposite direction than the one we should be going. We should be investing more in education and utilizing the Department of Education to more properly enhance and, again, invest in the educational process so that kids come out into the world actually having the knowledge and the tools and the intellectual strength to really succeed as an adult. But he's going in the exact opposite way. Then another one of his rants about nuclear.
And now they're talking about it all the time. It will be a nuclear war. It'll be a nuclear war. You're not even allowed to say it. I had people come down from MIT and tell me about nuclear. The power is so enormous. So this is not like the Second World War where we have army tanks and rifles and we go after each other. This is a level that will possibly end the world. And now they're talking about it all the time. It will be.
You know, it's interesting, and I talk about this a good bit. Apologies if you're watching in segment form and you didn't hear the beginning of the show. I am traveling this week, so the reason I'm staring up is to look at the monitor that is having to be up there. But this phenomenon I've talked about where it's really easy to recognize and point at problems. The hard part is outlining solutions. And so with many within the current political right wing, we've heard Tucker Carlson talk a lot about Russia's invasion of Ukraine, taking some vile stances on it. Trump and others who will criticize Biden, and their criticism is really just explaining a part of the problem, being because Russia invaded Ukraine and Putin is constantly threatening and boasting about Russia's nuclear power, there is more of a threat now than there has been in a very long time of a possible nuclear conflict. And that is terrifying. And so they'll point at that and say, oh my gosh, that means whatever Biden's doing must be terrible, without at all recognizing that the reason we're in this situation is because Putin decided to invade Ukraine and has this distorted view that he has to make Russia, bring it back to its Soviet Union glory or whatever it might be, and thinks Ukraine's a part of Russia and is thus causing all this carnage and a situation where globally we are in a terrifying moment. Now, is the solution then just do the opposite of what Biden's doing because clearly he's in the wrong here? No, because what we hear, especially I mentioned Tucker Carlson, from individuals like him, is we shouldn't be supporting, he'll say, Ukraine. We shouldn't be giving the aid to Ukraine that we're currently giving, military, lethal, and otherwise. Explain to me how that makes us less likely to get into a disastrous situation when it comes to nuclear war. Because Russia's not going to stop its invasion if the United States stops supporting Ukraine. And we would be causing an even more unstable future where Russia is now able to take over another country, violate the sovereignty of another country, and would likely push further. And so allowing and supporting Ukraine in their defense of themselves is actually the push for long-term peace. It is the step you would take if you actually cared about long-term peace. Just vaguely gesturing towards, oh, these problems are bad, true, and that's why we should stop supporting Ukraine, to me, doesn't make much sense. Then he's very proud of, he thinks he came up with a caravan.
They'd be flying, and they'd put planes on the runway so our planes couldn't land. They wouldn't let our buses in. They wouldn't let anything, and they didn't want them back. They were gone. They were the ones that got them out. They'd put them in the caravans. I came up with that name, but it was a caravan. They'd put them in the caravans, oftentimes in the middle of the caravan. They'd be flying, and they'd put planes on.
Important stuff being discussed there. And then we get to the attacking DeSantis part of the speech, which, as of now said countless times, I get very excited every time Trump starts raging at DeSantis, and when I see DeSantis likely getting in the race, because the more messy the primary gets, the more divided the GOP will be going in, likely into the general election, and that is good news for the next few years, meaning they would be more likely to lose the general election to whoever the Democratic nominee is. Here's this first moment.
Okay, so remember this. Ron DeSantis. Did anyone ever hear of DeSantis? The sanctimonious DeSantis. No, Ron DeSantis strongly opposed ethanol. Do you know that? And we don't even know if he's running, but I might as well tell you. If he's not running, I'll say he was fine on ethanol. Don't worry about it. He strongly opposed ethanol.
That's always such a weird admission that Trump will, or anytime it happens, it's quite the stunning admission. There's been times where he'll say, if polling is, just heard something strange come out of the TV. If polling is good, I'll say it's great. If it's bad, I'll say it's wrong. And with that, he's saying, if DeSantis isn't actually challenging me, I'm not going to have a problem with some of his stances. Here, his criticism on DeSantis's ethanol, or Trump's depiction of DeSantis's ethanol stance. And then we get to another moment, kind of a typical attack line we've seen from Trump against anyone, but especially now DeSantis, which is he's just another establishment figure like Paul Ryan.
We're leaving the age rating. But you have to remember, Ron was a disciple of Paul Ryan, who is a rhino loser who currently is destroying Fox and would constantly vote against entitlements. He would just vote against. Remember that, the wheelchair over the cliffs, the Democrats used it. The wheelchair over the cliff commercial, very effective. That was about him. But Paul Ryan's a big reason that Mitt Romney, I'm not a big fan of Mitt Romney, lost his election. And to be honest with you, Ron reminds me a lot of Mitt Romney. So I don't think you're going to be doing so well here, but we're going to find out. But those are the facts. But I'm proud to say the final numbers, we're leaving the...
So, a rhino is another term, as I bump my mic, that Trump will use against anyone who disagrees with them, Republican in name only. And for DeSantis, it is just going to be really fascinating to see, because a lot of times when Trump says that about someone, they really are more of an establishment figure. So when he says that about Mitt Romney is more of an old-fashioned Republican, this is a term people would use, or moderate Republican, and comes out on the side of reason more times than Trump does, right? And that makes him a rhino to Trump. But DeSantis is trying really hard to make himself out to be to the Trump base and to the Republican Party. Yes, a little bit more of a professional politician, but also still bonkers, also still right wing as it gets. And so seeing how these attack lines actually stick or don't stick to DeSantis in the eyes of the Republican Party base will be fascinating to watch. And then talking about DeSantis once more.
Like doing it. So on top of this, the publication said Trump still has really high approval ratings with the Republican voter base, is defeating Ron DeSantis in poll after poll by a lot, and I'm beating Joe Biden by a lot, very importantly. So like doing it. So on top of this.
So for what I'm about to say, I recognize I am not the person to give Trump strategy advice when it comes to how to win over his own base, because I don't understand the MAGA base at all, and would have thought they would turn against someone like Trump long ago if the world was reasonable. But it is strange to see Trump almost giving DeSantis a lot of relevance and power as he attacks DeSantis before DeSantis has even gotten into the race formally. And you would think, kind of again, in a reasonable world, it would be a bad idea for a candidate who has announced formally to constantly talk about a candidate who hasn't and kind of keep their name in the headlines over and over and make them out to be a powerful figure to your audience, because clearly you're concerned about them. And that's what Trump's attacks make me feel, or that's the impression that I get. But obviously the MAGA base loves these types of kind of childish attacks, even if they're preemptive attacks against DeSantis before he's actually gotten to the race. And then we'll get to him, as he has to do in every single public appearance that he possibly does, talking about the election being stolen, which of course it wasn't.
But we had an election that was not a good situation, not good at all. You've seen a lot of the reasons for it's a disgrace. We got more votes than any sitting president in history by a lot, by millions. We got 75 million votes. More. That's what they report. They say the other guy got 80. I don't think so. He did one hell of a job from his basement. But that's what it is. It's a very sad situation. In total, I successfully negotiated.
So saying that Biden didn't really get the amount of votes that he did get. And it is fascinating, this line of, I got more votes than any other president. And actually, I have one more clip for you after this. It's true. He got a record amount of votes, and then Biden got more than that. That's just the way that it went. I'm sorry. I know that's crushing to your heart, but that's just the reality. And waging an all-out assault on our democratic process and the belief in our democratic system is not the justified response when your fifis are damaged. Final moment here. He's going to end woke.
Together, we will end the era of weaponized government forever. We will end woke. We will crush the deep state. We will.
He's going to end woke and crush the deep state. I know I probably look strange looking up at the monitor, guys. We're doing what we got to do to make sure the show continues on while I am traveling. But there it is, another Trump speech. And I am just getting so pumped because I still have kind of the DeSantis moments on my mind. So pumped for Trump and DeSantis to be in the race and whoever else ends up getting in the Republican primary and cause a messy situation that will, while what it represents about the modern state of the Republican Party is disastrous and dangerous and terrifying, it will also be rather entertaining to cover and to observe.